Education and school are a function of society, and schools reflect the nature and character of society itself. What society considers important is what education focuses on to preserve the society. Today, we will go back in Arabic era and we will tackle on the flow of education in this era or the Islamic system of education. At the end of the discussion, you will be able to know and understand the educational goals and aims of this era, the curriculum, the agents or the persons or people being responsible in the implementation of education in Arabic era, and the influences of this era brought on Western education or in the present.
Arabic educational goals and aims. First is to cultivate religious commitment to Islamic beliefs. For them, the aim of education is the creation of the good and righteous man who worships Allah in the true sense of the term, builds up the structure of his earthly life according to the Sharia, and employs it to subserve his faith. Education should aim at the balanced growth of the total personality of man through the training of man's spirit, intellect, rational self, feeling, and bodily senses, such that faith is infused into the whole of his personality. Second one is to spread Islam and Muslim culture. Their aim was to spread religion among Muslims because they thought that knowledge is the only way of salvation. They thought that only knowledge can help a person to distinguish between right and wrong. They thought that it is better to educate one's children than giving alms. They believe in a saying that students' pen's ink is better than martyrs' blood. The third or the last one is to develop an expertise in mathematics, medicine, and science. By the middle of 9th century, the Islamic sciences emphasized the study of Quran, the Islamic scripture, and the Hadith, or the compilation of saying and traditions of Prophet Muhammad. Early Muslims' education emphasized practical studies such as application of technological expertise to the development of irrigation systems, architectural innovations, textiles, iron and steel products, the manufacture of gunpowder, the advancement of commerce, and the maintenance of a merchant marine.
Curriculum has two types of education, which is primary education and higher education. Curriculum in primary education center was maktabs. Maktabs was an elementary school which was usually attached to a mosque. Maktab is derived from an Arabic word kutab, which means writing. Teaching was done by Molvi or Molana. Only Muslim children were taught, and students were taught 3 R's, which is reading, writing, and arithmetic. They had to learn some portions of Quran. At first, they had taught the letters of alphabet that would be necessary to perform their religious duties. They were taught grammar, Persian, Arabic, and Urdu, arithmetic, conversation, poetry, and good manners are part of curriculum. Special attention was paid to good handwriting, and Gulistan's and Sadi's famous book Bustan was prescribed as textbooks for moral education. Children of rich people get education from home tutors. Teaching method in primary education is direct and oral, memorization and rote learning. Students use wooden pens for writing initially and after practicing their write on papers. In maktabs, teaching method was direct and oral. memorization, and rote learning was a main factor of teaching method. 10. Curriculum in higher education. Education center was called madrasa. Madrasa is derived from the Arabic word dars, which means lecture, so it was a place where lecture is given. Madrasa was an educational institution which imparted higher education, especially in Islamic. Institutions of higher learning were established in principal cities because specialized scholars in good numbers being available there only. Curriculum was both religious and secular. The period was 10 to 12 years, and curriculum was divided into two parts. And the two parts is religious education, includes deep study of Quran, Islamic law, and Sufism. And second is worldly education, which includes study of literature, logic, history, geography, astronomy, arithmetic, agriculture, and medicine. All subjects were not taught in all madrasas. Two subjects are taught in each madrasa, example poetry and music were taught in Delhi, while mathematics and astronomy in Sialkot. In some big towns, there were arrangements for studying advanced subjects. The teaching method in higher education is oral was used. Teacher used lecture method. There was monitorial system in the class, and the inductive and deductive methods were used for teaching as religion, philosophy, logic, and political science. There was a proper arrangement of practical teaching for music, handicraft, drawing, and medical science. Writing was more preferred than reading. And the medium in instruction was Persian because this was the court language. Arabic was compulsory for Muslims, and English could study their religious book. And also students were encouraged for self-study.
So agents, patronage of the rulers. Since acquiring knowledge was religious obligation, the rulers helped in the spread of education. They built educational universities and institutions. They endowed them with funds. The rulers patronized the men of learning. Next is the mosque and court schools. So, madrasa is an Arabic word for any type of educational institution, secular or religious, whether for elementary instruction or higher learning. The system of education in the Muslim world was unintegrated and undifferentiated. Learning took place in a variety of institutions. Among them is the halqa, or the study circle, the maktab or kutab, or the elementary school, the palace schools, bookshops, and literary salons, and the various types of colleges, the masjid, and the madrasa. The simplest type of Muslim education was offered in the mosque, where scholars who had congregated to discuss the Quran began before long to teach the religious sciences to the interested adults. Mosques increased in number under the caliphs, particularly in Abbasids. 3,000 of them were reported in Baghdad alone in the first decades of 10th century. As many as 12,000 were reported in Alexandria in the 14th century. Most of them with schools attended. Some mosques, such as the Al-Mansur, built during the reign of Harun al-Rashid in Baghdad, or those in Isfahan, Mashhad, Qom, Damascus, Cairo, and the Alhambra became centers of learning for the students from all over the Muslim world. Each mosque usually contained several study circles, or the halqa, so named because the teacher was, as a rule, seated on a dais or cushion with the pupils. They are gathered in a semicircles before him. The more advanced a student, the more closer he was seated to the teacher.
Islamic education brought many influences on Western education. First, in mathematics, the numbering and counting system called Arabic numeral were developed by Muslim mathematicians and are still used today. With the implementation of Arabic numbering system, elementary calculations were perfected, and the relationships among the equal and unequal and prime numbers were elaborated. Al-Khawarizmi wrote a textbook of algebra in example. In language also, many common words in English and European languages have been drawn from the Arabic words. Some examples are admiral, alchemy, algebra, almanac, candy, sofa, safari, spinach, and sugar, and we are using these words until now. An Islamic influence is evident in Western literature as well. For instance, Robinson Crusoe by Defoe is sourced in Message from Hai bin Yaqzan, which was written by Muslim philosopher Ibn Tufayl. The Arabian Nights has been repeatedly published worldwide also, which are this literature is example of Islamic influences. In science and in medicine also, great volume of scientific research were translated into Latin, which had a great impact. Many Muslims established laboratories, which they conducted their experiments and published their discoveries that is used until today. The scientific discoveries of steam, electricity, telephone, and radio signals are important and evidences. Avicenna in his canon of medicine, Al-Kanun Fit at-Tib, became the most authoritative medical text, passing through numerous editions throughout the years. And lastly, in education, the most profound and vital contribution of Muslims to educational theory is demonstrated by their advocacy of universal free education. Islam encourages the education of capable boys and girls of all stations of life and the acceptance of teachers of different races and persuasions. The Muslims passed on the concept of specialization of universities within a narrow range of subjects, endowed chairs, scholarship for needy, public financial support, establishment of endowments, auditing of courses, organization of academic disciplines, and student selection of field and advisory. Islam has established a legacy of outstanding moral guidelines which there is a crying need for in contemporary society. And that's it. That's the situation of education in Arabic era that time. And to end this, Arlian et al. 2017 says, education is about what was, what is, and what might be.